when the first phone call comes in for a prospective client, are you the person who still says, I want to take this intake call and learn more about the client? Are you still that person, or have you passed that along to someone else?
Yeah, that's still me. And I've thought about, will there be a point where that won't be me? I don't think so. Because again, it goes back to the people factor. I think it's the most important part of what we do is finding the right match, right? Like the right interior designer needs to be with the right client. It's really important that I sort of vet them out the same way that they vet me out, right? Like they need to know that this is going to be the person that's going to work on their project for 2+ years and vice versa.
Hey, y'all, you're listening to the Designer Within podcast, episode number 52. I'm John McClain, and welcome to the Designer Within podcast, the business-minded podcast created for creative entrepreneurs by a creative entrepreneur. That's me. I know firsthand the challenges, but also the victories that can come with our careers. And I'm here to sip and spill the tea with you. It's time to dive deep within yourself and redesign your own business and your life from the inside out. Together, we will uncover secrets and share valuable insights. So prepare for a transformative experience, my friend, because it's time to unleash the designer within. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Designer Within. We have made it. We are on episode 52. It has been one official year since I have started the Designer Within podcast. And of course, I missed a few episodes here and there because of vacation and being out of town, but we are officially at episode 52. So we're going to call this the 1 year anniversary of the Designer Within podcast. I'm so excited that you have been here with me through this journey, and I hope that you do continue to come along and see what we have in store next. There are so many good things I have planned for you guys on season 2, because at episode 52, I am closing out season 1. And with that, I just wanted to say again, thank you so much for being along this journey, listening. I hope you've learned a lot. I hope you've been entertained. And I am going to take a small hiatus. We're going to end season 1 at episode 52. And then we will pick back up in the fall with the second season. And again, I have lots and lots of surprises in store for you. Lots of great interviews, lots of great teaching episodes, as I call them, and just lots of fun on the podcast. So please don't go away. Hang around through the summer. You can go back. There are 52 episodes to listen to, and we have another one today. So this is another great episode. We're not going to just close it out without another episode. Go back through the library of episodes. Again, there's really, really so much in there. I usually like to listen to podcasts 2 or 3 times anyway when they're really good, just to make sure that I had grasped everything. And you guys know that I love to teach on the podcast. Also, I did want to ask you, if you have not added the podcast to the download in your podcast area, I would love for you to do that. It helps more people find us. It increases our stats, and it really does just push the podcast up. So whatever platform you're listening to, if you could just set your little switch to automatic downloads, that would be wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I would so appreciate it. Also, if you have been listening and you do enjoy the podcast, please go and leave a review. I would love if you could leave a written review, but at the very least, please just go and click the stars. Give us a 5-star review, of course, on the platform that you're listening to. Once again, it just helps other people find the podcast and really pushes it to the top of the search engine. So if you could give me a review, if you could give me a written review, you get bonus points. And then again, remember to please add us to the automatic downloads on the podcast platform that you listen to. All right, that is it. That is my little announcements for episode 52, the celebration episodes. Do you see the confetti flying everywhere? But today, before we close out season 1, I do have another fabulous episode for you. If you missed last week's episode, episode 51 with Brittany Farinas, I do want you to go back and listen to that, because today's episode is part 2 of my interview with Brittany. That episode, I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you haven't listened to it, please go back. Brittany is just such a powerhouse of information, and at such a young age in her career, and is just a great, great inspiration for everyone. But the second part of this episode, we're going to discuss the importance of maintaining direct client communication and the strategies that Brittany has for handling various client needs. So we talk about how there are different clients and how she handles those. We also cover the process of project intake, managing client expectations, and the integration of custom furniture furniture into projects, which is a really good lesson. I love custom furniture in my own projects, and so does Brittany. And she really just schools you. She gives you everything you need to know, basically, to start bringing custom furniture into your business. We also touch on business scaling, including outsourcing procurement and hiring consultants such as business coaches, accountant, PR people to help really enhance the business operations that Brittany has. And of course, really the focus of bringing in those people is to give you a way to focus on the creativity and to deliver high quality, customized design solution. And Brittany is going to do that. So without further ado, let's dive into part 2 of my episode with Brittany Farinas. Enjoy, everybody. Have you found other ways that you have learned to do that, learn to be the best version of yourself? Do you let clients know, for instance, okay, here are some, like on the business side of things, you let them know, okay, there's a couple of hiccups on the job, but we're going to take care of it. How much do you reveal to your client to sort of keep that magic, I guess I'm trying to say, for the project? Do you want them to like
Yeah.
have an illusion that everything's great, or do you let them in on some of the issues that happen along the way? Because there are issues every time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to think that a design project goes from design to construction to completion and there's no hiccups is like, where are those jobs?
I
But
wish.
look, I think a big part of that is educating your clients. Like I am constantly like, even today, I'm on site and the closet vendor comes in and she had outdated drawings from a year ago. Okay. And she's showing the client and the client's like, this is not what, like, going off the rails. I'm like, okay, hold on. I'm like, let's schedule a meeting next week. The three of us, we're going to sit down and we're going to do an audit of these drawings because nothing's been made yet. So it's like things are going to happen, but finding the solution is more important than sitting there and talking about the problem. And yes, there are going to be times, where, hey, look, if we made a mistake, like let's say the wrong fabric was ordered, we are going to buy the fabric. I'm not going to charge my client twice for a mistake that we made. And I lead with that. I strive for running a business that is focused on having that integrity. I'm very transparent with my clients. I still keep the magic on when it comes to, the fun parts of like doing the custom furniture. I think that's a really special experience that I'm able to give to my clients because, taking them to the shop and having them, try their sofa or look at their media units or their beds, like, at like 60-70% completion for them, it's like, oh my God, like, is this real life? Like, I didn't know that this could happen. Like that, I keep the fun part fun. And then I keep, the construction and the challenges and the little nuanced stuff just as organized as possible. You're not striving for perfection. You just got to be organized and just be ready to, to answer the questions and to be there and to make sure that decisions are being made with your direction, right? Like my clients, all they care about is like, please make sure that they know what they're doing as far as like, what I want. They don't read our drawings. They only look at renderings. They look at materials. And then they're like, okay, the drawings package that they paid for, they know that this is to be utilized by the contractor and their subs. And so like, they are just like, okay, we want it to look like this. So do your job, kindly. So
Yes.
I think,
Sometimes kind.
yeah, we're like, okay, hopefully. But,
Yeah.
and a lot of times, like, at least a lot of our clients, they've done this before. So they know the gaps. Our job is to just tighten those gaps as much as we can. But, they're still going to be there. And these projects will last, 2 to 3 years sometimes. Imagine all the data, all the information. It's a lot. So yeah, I think just being honest and open, but I never, ever go to a client and I'm like, okay, we have a problem. And then I just leave it at that. Like,
Yeah.
are you kidding? To like give that client that stress with no solution, for me, that's like a huge no-no. And that's what I've, sort of taught my team is like, even when they come to me, it's like, okay, guys, whenever you have an issue, like, try to figure out the best solution. If you don't have one, we'll talk about it. But you never give client that stress because this is not their wheelhouse. They don't know how to even go about fixing something when it comes to a job site. So it's important to keep them sort of at bay.
That's great. Great advice. I mean, as a designer for a long time and a business coach, I'm really big on processes and systematic ways of working in my business. I can tell that you are too. Do you start every project the same way and have the process laid out for everybody to understand as they go through? I'm kind of sensing that you probably do.
It's like I do, but it's like finding that limit, right? Like finding like where you go from being systematic to being fluid and like what that balance is. I think that's something that takes a while to figure out. I think we have that down now, and we do have a very formal internal process, but to the client, it's a little bit more fluid than systematic, and it's been successful that way. So I'm actually, instead of having hard milestones throughout the design process, I'm happy to have them come in during the progress. And I'm happy to have them come in and look at rendering when, when they are just in like the space planning phase and they're sort of like these black and white renders, but that they can see the space, just taking it a step further than just a 2D plan. That really helps us. And the things that we've been doing as of recent that has been super successful is putting on the goggles and having them walk through the spaces and giving them a 360, presentation. And we do that at the space planning phase because I think when people see design and if they're not used to like, understanding that process from conceptualizing to the development, it's a lot
Yeah.
of information to take in. And maybe they don't know how to articulate what they like or don't like from a room. So I like to give them the design in sort of these like baby steps. So yeah, we've added that milestone into our process as of recent. But I mean, look, as far as like, monthly check-ins and, the site visits and how that's all organized, it's really per project. So we will tailor like a specific system within our sort of structure that we've built. So we have basically a checklist of like 53 items, right? Is what we have for a just a generic project. If it's, a renovation or a new construction, they typically will have the same steps. And so from those 63 items, when we take a project in, we will audit that list and say, okay, what items don't pertain to this project, or maybe is there something we need to add? But I think starting with that foundation is really helpful. And then also, keeping that structure internally, but then on the client side, being a little bit more fluid and, they enjoy it. For them, it's more of a like funner like experience. They get to come in and sit down and hang out with us. And, I think it's just a fun time.
Yeah, you're still the person making the magic happen, and they want that to be done. And especially at a luxury client level, they don't really always want to be in the minutia of everything. And I think that what you hit on there was critically important is that you're sort of catering every client project to that client. And I think so many of us are afraid to use common sense and just say, oh, wait a minute, Mrs. Jones doesn't like this meeting, but oh, Mr. Smith, he loves when I do this X, Y, and Z. So I think that it's just about figuring out that client's personality as well, which what I'm hearing from you is to say, oh, this person is a little more keen on me having more visits with them, or maybe needs a little more hand
Yes.
holding, or doesn't really understand this part of the process, right? When do you figure that
Yeah.
out? Do you do an intake form of your client when you're trying to figure out who they are, what they need, what their family need, what their home need? What kind of questions are you asking them? I'm just curious how far you go into that with them, because some of them can get pretty personal sometime, I know.
Yeah. So I don't do any intake form. Usually I'll meet the clients before we find with them. And I think in the, first phone call, I kind of get a little bit of a vibe. But I really just, I don't know if it's intuition or what it is, but I just know based off of their concerns, the questions that they have about our services. Sometimes I'll get clients that they have no questions. I'm like, "Are you sure you have no questions?" "No, we don't have any questions. When can we start?" I'm like, "Okay, this is gonna be very smooth," and then we treat clients the same way, but if I can tell that someone, has something like an area that they really want, us to focus on or give attention to, like, I'll lean into that because if I can tell that something means something to you, like, I want you to feel good about this process, it's really stressful and it costs a lot of money. And so like I think that, in order for clients to walk away and be like, wow, I just had a really great experience, or wow, I want to hire them again, or hey, so and so, like you need to hire my designer, or like, oh no, you can't have my designer because then she'll be too busy. Like, like all those little things that you're like, okay, we did a good job by them. Yeah, you just gotta like figure out what their personality type is. And that comes with just being good with people. I think it's a skill, that I've definitely built upon it over the years.
Especially with your other jobs that you've had and all the other things that had to
Yeah.
have helped you understand people better as well.
Yeah. And just be a good listener, like I think people really appreciate and notice when you're listening to them and when you can translate what they're saying. I have this one client, it's so funny. Like we will go to a meeting and she at this point, she'll start like, trying to articulate what she wants. Like, I really want like I want the bed to feel like it's soft, but it's hard at the same time. And then she'll like look at me and she'll be like, Brittany knows what she knows what I'm trying to say. And I'm like, yes, I know what she's trying to say. She wants it to like be soft, but like it has to look hard. And she's like, yes, like I got you. It's just like things like that. You kind of just have to, either you pick up on it or you don't. But if you do, then great.
You have a team of 7, is that correct? Total, you have 7 on your team now, is that right?
About 7. In-house, it's 4 of us, and
Yeah.
then, outside the office, we have, again, our marketing, accounting, and business development.
The reason I ask the question is when the first phone call comes in for a prospective client, are you the person who still says, "I want to take this intake call and learn more about the client?" Are you still that person, or have you passed that along to someone else at this point in your career?
Yeah, that's still me. And I think, I've thought about, will there be a point where that won't be me? I don't think so. I think, and this is something too that I've had to really sit down and think about is like what I want the business to look like, as it pertains to like my future and how I see, the growth. I think there has to be a time where you sort of like, you have all this information, right? Like I've done all this research, I see all the things. It's like finding that happy medium between like what is supposed to be done or what you should do versus like what feels right. But I think that, the inquiry calls will always be like my thing because again, it goes back to the people factor. And I think it's so important. I think it's the most important part of what we do is like finding the right match, right? Like the right interior designer needs to be with the right client. Otherwise, it's just a recipe for ultimate disaster. It's really important that I sort of vet them out the same way that they vet me out, right? Like they need to know that this is going to be, the person that's going to work on their project for 2+ years and vice versa. And I'm really big on energy.
Let me ask you a question though. So back to the psychology part of this. So you're the person
Yeah.
doing the initial phone call. You're sort of vetting the client, getting to know the client. As you get to know that client, when do you bring in your team to say, "Hi, client, here is also the rest of my team," and then piggybacking off of that, do you tell your team like, "Okay, Mrs. Jones, she really wants to know about, like the fabrics are really important to her, or like she really wants to have her handheld on site visits or whatever." When do you bring your team in? And then also, do you sort of relay this sixth sense that you have about feeling that energy and that client getting into their mindset to your team?
Yeah, so the matchmaking doesn't stop at the client and me, right? Like, then it comes down to my girls. I'm like, okay, who is going to be the right lead designer for this project? A lot of it will be personality, but also aesthetics. So, like, if we have a Spanish Mediterranean project, like, I know, one of my girls really strives in that aesthetic. So, I'll definitely think of her for that project. But then also, it really just comes down to timing and workflow and where we're at. But what'll happen is once I know that project is secured, I will come into the office and tell the team, "Hey guys, we have a new project." And then they get all super excited and we get, at the island together in our office. And then, I start to give them like a little bit of a brief of the client, the property, the scope. And at the end of the day, it's really like, all hands on deck. So if one of my girls is the lead designer, the whole team is still super involved and they know what's going on in the project. Then introducing them to the client, what I'll do is at the first time that they come into the office, typically it's for the space planning meeting. So right away, I go right into the concept, which is really just imagery. We'll send that over to the client, and this will be like a 1 to 2 week turnaround. This is like a very, casual sort of like vibe board just to get aligned on like the direction of where we want to go. And then once they give us some feedback, we're like, okay, great. Now that we know kind of the look and feel, we're going to jump into the space. And then when they come in for that first meeting, that's where, they will meet that lead designer but they get copied into like that first email when we send the concept board. So they already know the name. Then they come in and they're like, "Oh, so and so, it's so nice to meet you." And then, kind of kick off the relationship in person that way.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you're still the integral part of talking to the client, landing the deal, getting them to sign, winning them over on your business, on you and your team. And I'm sure you're selling your team and your business to them this entire time, saying, "Oh, we have these resources that we're going to bring to you." So you're the one on the upfront doing all of that. And then you come in and introduce the client to your team and then say, here is this fabulous new client, and here's my fabulous team, and this is how we're going to make a fabulous project together. But you're enjoying, and it sounds like a very integral part of your business to also be very active on the front end of that client meeting and that sort of getting them to win them over. Because I think that, and I say this because I've experienced it myself, when I've handed too many things off to my team and taking myself out of the picture, it does affect the closing of the sales, and it does affect the type of clients that we get. And it does affect sometimes the information that's relayed up front to make sure that that client is set up for a successful project. So I love that you're very hands-on with that. And I don't think you have any, like you said, any plans of letting that go. It sounds like it's going to be a part
No.
of your,
Yeah,
yeah,
I love
yeah.
it. I think, it's great when you find the right clients. Now, it's funny because I also delegated this, at one point, and that was because I didn't want to, I guess, like, deal with having so much on my plate, but also I wasn't working with my ideal clients. So there was a lot of that overwhelm from like, hey, I didn't get this today. Hey, I'm not, hey, what's the status of this? Like, can we set up a call? Tomorrow, today. And it was just so like, oh, like, can someone just take this over so I don't have to deal with it? But now I feel like we've sort of found our pocket that I'm really happy with. We're working and serving our ideal client, and our ideal client, they understand and respect, our business and the way that we work and our communication style. And because of that, and because of that trust and freedom, then it becomes really enjoyable to have a connection with my clients. It's not this like chore of, here we go, I have to write this whole Bible of recap email. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't, like, I am not an admin business. I'm a design business that does admin, right? So like, I think that, once you look at your business and you're like, okay, like, how many things am I handing off? What are the things that I don't want to hand off? And what's happening here? And sort of like deep diving, I didn't realize a lot of this until I started investing in my business. And I started to, I engaged a business consultant, and for months, we would talk weekly, and it was, okay, like, what is going wrong? Like, what is not working? And it's just like, again, the drops in the bucket, like, one little thing at a time, one little thing at a time. Because then that clarity starts to come through, because it could be an internal team issue. It could be, I'm working with the wrong vendors. The GC, the client wants to hire their own GC. Like, there's so many factors, and then it really just comes down to like, okay, how do we get to a point where the business feels really good? And it just feels like, I'm so excited to wake up in the morning and do this work that we do, which is very, very layered.
It is, and I think what you hit on there was you said you found your pocket that you're in, and I think that the key to that sounds to me as if you've started to delegate the things that you don't enjoy doing or maybe not as good as someone else is doing, but you're really good at closing the sale. And by the way, let's don't skirt the issue here. We are closing sales. This is a sales business in the beginning. We are still
Yeah.
selling, right? This is
Yeah.
sales. And I think that so many designers are afraid to label it as such, but we are salespeople in that beginning. We're actually throughout the whole process, you're selling something.
Even when we're at the construction site and literally someone's like, oh, this trim should be black. And I'm like, no, it should be white. And then it's like the client's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, because X, Y, like, you know what I mean? It's like you're selling all the way through,
Never stops.
100%.
Yeah,
Never
it
stop.
never stops. It never stops. And I love that you're great at it. And I love that you have kept that into your sort of business plan, but also have learned to delegate to your team. When did you start to look at the strengths of your team members to say, oh, this person is good at procurement, this person is good at follow up, this person is good at weekly updates? When did you start to do that? As you hired them, did you have that in mind for that person? Just curious.
So when I started hiring, I definitely, at first I had the designers do the procurement. So they would kind of like sort of manage one job from all standpoints. And I found some errors there. So I wasn't really, looking to do that again. So then I started hiring designers that were just focused on design, and that really just means 3D modeling, CAD drawing, and, admin stuff with like FF&E schedules and anything that's like construction documentation. And then I hired a procurement specialist. I will say that one of the biggest changes that I recently made was now we do purchasing outside of the office. So nothing gets purchased here, which has been huge. I strongly recommend this for all designers out there. I think that, the purchasing part of what we do, it is a luxury service because we are not an accounting firm or a purchasing procurement. So we procure everything, we specify everything, and then we go ahead and, have an outside team who actually is under the same umbrella as our bookkeeper. So it's very harmonious. It's just this like beautiful marriage of purchasing that's happening and all the numbers and the things are, getting all squared away outside of the office. So we can really just focus on creative. But when I was hiring, I didn't think about like, okay, if this person isn't as good as, in one area, let me just like shift them over. It's always been a people thing and like, trying to grow them into whatever position they sell or whatever niche. Like we have one of our designers who like her specialty is playrooms and, children's rooms. So even if another designer has a project, that maybe she's not the lead on, but there's kids room, like she'll hand that over, and I like to work that way because it just I want people to shine in, like, in their zone, right? Like, I want them to, do work that makes them feel the happiest.
You want to still develop them as well as an employer to your employee. You still want them to grow and to be able to feel fulfilled in their line of work.
Yeah, and I think hiring outside consultants that specialize in certain aspects of the business, and especially when they work for only designers, like, it's a luxury to have, I feel really lucky to be able to, have people around me that are really helping me build the business and maintain its health, and it just feels like at this time, like, focusing on the creative is my number one priority and really, showing that through our work.
Can I ask you on the procurement side of things? A lot of people keep that in house, and a lot of people do take that outside of their business. There's no right or wrong answer. Basically, it's whatever you feel works best for you. How do you make sure, just kind of getting into the nitty gritty of this? I love this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. How do you make sure that when you're outsourcing this to a company who is handling your procurement and your purchasing, I'm sure they're tracking and handling the deliveries and returns and all those things. How do you make sure that you're making profit and not losing money from hiring this company?
It's a very organized system that we have going on. So, essentially, what we'll do is the program that we use to log in all the specs, the budget, it basically then exports into QuickBooks. It sends the client the invoice. They pay for the item. We pull a report where, it's called the budget versus actual report. And so as the, purchasing agent is purchasing all the items for the project, we have a meeting beforehand. We go through all the things, any special details. Hey, look, like this one item, it's a specialty thing. Just order it to our studio. Like we get all those items sort of like, ironed out before she goes into purchasing. And then once she goes in, she'll go ahead and prepare all the orders. And then she'll say, "Hey, Brittany, this is the report. It's all done. Maybe there was a variance on the job. Maybe we have to bill a client a change order, or maybe there's a credit on a job, and so all of that, we know it in the very front end. Our typical purchasing process will be about a week. So we'll have the meeting. She'll go off and do all the purchasing and the reporting, and then she'll get back to me either that week or the following. And then we'll review everything. So essentially, that account is closed. Like, it is closed out and all the items are in transit, and if there's any credit, then that gets moved into a contingency account because, as we know, there's things that come up in a project, and then if there's a change order that needs to be billed to the client, we bill it to the client. As I said in the very beginning, I'm very transparent with my clients. Like, if I ever had a client, and it happens in the past where they're like, "Hey, like, we wanna know everything that's been purchased," receipts or whatever the case. I have it all, and like now we weren't working with our ideal client back in the day. So the clients are working with now and in the last year, they're not asking for these things. They know and
Exactly.
trust that we're taking care of the job. But yeah, to answer your question on the purchasing, we close that out like ASAP so that we can keep things moving forward. Keeping money in an account, paying the mill worker, paying the painter, paying whoever, like having those funds doesn't do anything but potentially hurt the business because it's just a lot, again, just a lot of information, a lot of projects that are happening at once.
I like that, but I guess what I'm trying to ask is how do you make sure that you're not paying for this procurement management person out of pocket? Do you add it into the client's price of the
Oh,
product?
yes.
Or yeah,
Sorry, I didn't
just
realize that that was
no,
the
no, I
question.
love that I love all that. That's great. I love that. See, this just goes to prove that you know every inch of your company, that you know all the details. I love that. But I'm just wondering on the front end of things, how when you decided to hire someone to manage your purchasing, did you decide to change how much you bill the client? Did you absorb that cost? How did you work that into the business model?
It's just like additional hours on the job. So like, let's
Oh,
say on average it may take about like 20 hours to purchase, like just to like give a rough number. So, 20 hours, I just add that into the hours billed back to the client. And trust me, I always tell them, I'm like, it seems like maybe, it might feel like a lot, but this is the most important part. Like you second to the design. It's like you want to make sure that like this is getting done properly, accurately, and that there's no bump in the road when it comes to financial things on the job. This is where we strive for perfection here. You know what I mean?
so it's not really baked into the cost of the product. You're just charging an hourly rate for that person to manage the procurement. So you're not out of pocket. Hopefully you're even making money from it. I would hope on those type of things. But I guess the thing I want people to know is you have a contingency in your financials to say, oh, I'm not just going to add someone on to my team to do this, losing money from it. So you're actually covering the
Yeah,
cost of that person. Okay.
exactly.
Wow. That's great. That's great because a lot of times someone will like, "Oh, I need help, I need help," and then they'll just bring it in and whatever. I hate the term markup. I try to let that go, but a lot of people still use it. But they just want to build that into like whatever markup they have on the product and just absorb it. So if they're charging whatever 40, 50% markup, and then they hire someone to manage procurement, they're just absorbing the cost of hiring that person, which is so wrong in my opinion, because you're losing money and you're giving the client a better process. The entire process from start to finish is just smoother for them as well. So the whole experience is better for the client. So they should pay for that because again, this is a luxury experience.
Exactly. And I think that you have to, or at least like the way that I've, analyzed this process over the last couple of years is like, this really is so important. Like you know it, like, or rather I'll speak from my perspective. I know that this is such an important, part of their lives. This is their most important asset. I also have to then believe that they are going to pay for every single step of the way. Like it just has to be that. And, at the end of the day, whether you want to call it a markup or a product commission or whatever the case, that fee, like there are hours that, are allotted in the years of research and relationship building and access to vendors. And you don't just get that, for free. And I think that it sounds a little harsh, but
Nope.
it's kind of like, look, this is what it is. Like I'm literally, I am an artist at the end of the day. Like you're not questioning like your, other vendors, like specialty vendors in your life, and like if you really care about investing in your home and we are the right match for each other, like, that I am going to do good by you, and I'm not sitting here saying, "Okay, how can I make the most money off of you?" No, I need to cover my costs. I need to make a living just like you, and I need to make sure that I'm doing a great job, and I can't unless I'm making profit. So, and I think that's okay to say.
It's not only okay, it's recommended. It is highly recommended. We're not running a hobby here. This is a real business. And I love that you thought about that. And I love that you set those expectations up. Kind of back to before we close out here, kind of back to your business perception and then your social media and your website. I feel that when you put the best version of yourself out into the world, that people look at you and they say, wow, okay, this is a polished company. This is a polished person who has their stuff together. They know how to run a business and they're going to know how to run my project. And that comes at a cost because again, this is a luxury service. We're not designing
Yep.
something for people who, I always say I probably couldn't even afford myself as a designer, but it is something that I value and that your client values. But I think with you, what I just want you to know, what I see from you is that initial perception of your business says that it's worth paying for. And I think that is just a really important part for people to not forget when they're looking at how to set up the image of their company. So kudos to you on that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a long road. And it's still, and by the way, I feel like you've caught me at such a great time because over the last 6 months, I really just like dived into my business and said, okay, like, how can I really make this like what I imagine my dream business to look and feel like, and I've sort of just been like, okay, like this is it, I need to make sure that all of my corners are covered, my team is good, I'm good, that, my family, like my mom, I think about like I want to make sure that like she's good in the future. Like I just think about all these things and I'm just like, okay, enough with this like young girl, in the scene that's like, working with like, great clients and great projects. And I think, designers, they need to hear this because I remember I needed to hear this, last year is like, you gotta charge. You gotta charge because, I remember a client of mine being like, Brittany, that's what you're gonna charge me? I'm like, yeah. They're like, charge me more. I'm like, are you sure? Like, what? Like, it's just crazy to think about that because, like,
Uh,
you know, the work that we do is really hard. It's not easy.
And I think that you are testimonial to the fact that bringing in outside help that you mentioned you had advisors and other people that worked with you has helped you grow. And I'm assuming it's obviously helped you to get to another level of understanding of what your business needs and what you need as well. So what's new? What's next on the horizon for you for House of One? What's on the what I know there has to be something you have in the works. So tell me about any future plan.
So like I said, right now we're in such a great place. I feel so confident and just, happy to do the work that we're doing. I definitely would love to open a staging division. Historically, we've had some of our projects that originally were custom homes, end up selling and becoming real successful transactions for our clients. And so there's this, I guess it's like other pocket that I would love to sort of, dive into and see how that can play in with our relationships that we have with our custom furniture vendors. And, maybe designing a line of furniture is definitely something, I'd love to do. It's just, I think it's just a different level of artistry that like, if you know, you know what I mean? It's like, when you're in there, like, you mentioned to me that your business is like, your main focus is custom. And I think there's just so much that you can do when you have the opportunity to outfit an interior with custom furniture. And so to be able to do that and speak to such a wide market, I think staging would just be really great for us in the future. So definitely that.
I love that, and, I did wanna just touch on the custom part of this. Tell me about the custom side of your business and what that's done to help your business grow, to help you creatively, and how you decided to start making custom products for clients.
So I started doing custom furniture on the very first project that I was working on, and I think at the time I didn't fully understand what it meant to really work with vendors and that communication because everything around me was just happening so fast that I kind of was just like trying to digest it all. But I realized how much, flexibility that you can bring to a project, by incorporating integrated elements. One of the main things that I really focus on with our work is the idea of amenitized living. So how can we bring, amenities into people's lives, into their homes? I think about when I visit beautiful hotels and like, oh, that's a really cool idea, whether it's a detail on a headboard, whether it's some sort of like bar component, storage, things that, can improve, your work life at home, things like that that we can sort of incorporate into our clients' home is really interesting for me. And also, just the ability to be a little bit more fluid with the selection of finishes, I think is really what makes a piece so beautiful is like, how can you now incorporate a custom element into a palette that you've custom designed? So it only feels right to sort of bring in custom elements to a project. And I love just being able to, swing by the shop and see the pieces and, check the details and make sure that things are going in the right direction. And going back to, the experience with our clients, being able to bring them over to the shop and, we call it a tush test and have them tush test the sofas and the chairs and they see the pieces and they're like, "Oh my god." And they're just, again, it's like filling in those gaps of like, how can we get the client excited all along the way? And so that's really special. And the company that we work with, I mean, it just so happens that I have a very close, very like family-like relationship with them. And and they do some of the best work in Miami. So it just really is it's a great experience all around.
It really does elevate the experience for the client as well, because again, it's a luxury experience. You're bringing them something that is not on a website, is not in a catalog, is not on a vendor's
Yeah.
showroom floor. And as great as our vendors are that we use on a regular basis, unfortunately, there's always something, it seems to me, that I'm like, oh, if that was only 6 inches wider, or if that was
Yes.
only, upholstered in something different, or whatever, if the tufting was going vertical instead of horizontal, I don't know. Things like that. And it's always surprised me of how many designers are afraid to dip their toe into the waters of custom, because not only does it just let your creativity flow endlessly, like you said, but it also can be a great way to up level the client experience, and the profit is great as well. Let's talk about that, because you're
Oh,
charging
yeah.
for something that is one of a kind. Like, it's not anywhere to be found. You can't find it on a website, and you can't just click and put it into your cart, right?
Exactly. And I tell my clients all the time, they're like, "Hey, look, I saw this sofa at, X showroom." And I'm like, "Look, I am not the type of designer, maybe this will change over the next like couple years, but I personally don't like buying my items from overseas. I think Italian and, European manufacturers have just, a great sensibility for details, but I just like to control my product and I like to be able to just, like you said, just let my creativity flow and not be restricted to, certain selections. But yes, I also tell my clients, by the way, like this will free up a certain percentage of the budget so we can allocate it towards things that I think are better spent for custom stuff like lighting. I think lighting is like, you have to splurge on lighting. It is the jewelry of the home, like quite literally. So, when it comes to upholstery, I'm like, okay, forget about price. It's just gonna look better, like overall in the space versus having to, retrofit something for a room. So yeah, and then once you have great relationships with vendors, of course, you're getting things at, wholesale price oftentimes.
Do you have any
Sure.
tips for people who want to start doing that? How to find a vendor? What did you do to find the vendor that you wanted to use? Because I know a lot of people don't even know where to start.
Yeah, I mean, I would do, some research on local designers, if you know of a designer that is doing custom stuff, or maybe you don't know how to spot custom stuff, you're like, "Well, I don't know, like, what's custom, what's retail?" Just go on Instagram, check out some other designers, click in their tags, see if they're tagging people. That's one way to do it. Another way is just ask, like, if you're working with a contractor, a lot of contractors have their own millworkers and, upholsterers, maybe not as much, but I know a lot of companies do both. So I would ask a contractor. And if not, then I would just do some research on Google. And then when you're interviewing these vendors, I would ask, hey, what other jobs have you done in the area? Do you work with any designers in the area? Because it is important to work with a reputable company, a company that you can count on, that is, can hold their own. And, because unfortunately in this business, we do become the middlemen, right? And we're sort of like, okay, we brought in the vendor, but it's important to make it clear to the client, like, "Hey, look, like, this is this vendor. This is not you're not purchasing your furniture through me necessarily. Like, it's not my shop. It's their shop, but these are the resources I'm bringing forward." And so with that being said, you have to make sure that those resources, they're gonna represent your brand well. And yeah, and it's not always about cost. You gotta I think the most important thing I've learned is like, you get what you pay for. And so if something seems a little bit more higher price, but it's a vendor that you can trust, there is a cost to that trust and reputation. And yeah, and I think just kind of doing research that way will help you get to a vendor that you can talk to. And what you need to give the vendor for any custom piece is overall dimensions. I think a rendering is always helpful. If you have a reference image, then great. But the more information, the better.
Bravo. That was like schooling 101 in custom furniture right there. I love it. Very, very good. I could talk to you all day. Tell everybody where they can find you, your website. I know you said you hang out mostly on Instagram, so tell everyone your handle there. And then of course we'll put everything in the show notes as well. But tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, so my website is House of One, that is the numeric one.com. And then the Instagram is House of One, that is one spelled out, underscore. And my personal is Brittany Alexa underscore. So looking forward to
Great.
connecting. And thank you so much. This was so much fun.
So fun. I encourage you all listening and watching this on YouTube, go and check out her website, check out her social media. Just very well done, very well put together. I applaud you on all of that. And I just thank you again for a great conversation. So open, so honest, so just helpful for people listening. So thank you for that and much success to you in the future. Can't wait to see where you go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of the Designer Within podcast. It means the world to me. If you're ready to dive deeper into the topics that we've discussed here, be sure to check out my online coaching and courses program, designsuccessacademy.com. Here I will teach you everything you need to know to run your interior design business from starting the project all the way to the end, including marketing and pricing your services for profit. And for more information on this podcast, including how to be a guest or my design services in general, go to johnmcclain.co. That's johnmcclain.co. See you soon, friend.